So what he'll be sharing tonight is based on these kind of hands-on experiences. It's not just kind of general principles that seem like they should work. It's really all based on courses in the real world. So I think that's what everyone here is looking for. So Grant, really excited to hear what you have to share tonight.
Awesome, Abe. Thanks so much for the introduction. And also thank you to everybody who's here and everybody who's going to be joining. I was really, really happy about the response to this. We actually maxed out the registration capabilities of GoToWebinars. First time this happened for me. So really happy to be here and to be sharing with you everything I can to make this a valuable experience. And also just like, hopefully everybody can hear everything okay, see everything okay. If anybody's having any issues, please type in the chat box to let us know so we can fix it so you don't miss any part of the presentation. But yeah, I guess without further ado, let's dive into it. So kind of a quick intro. Today we're talking about how to 10x your course earnings. And this comes from MYE and Ruzuku combining to bring you this. So I know some of you are from both audiences, but we're going to be talking about a lot of really cool stuff. And specifically what we're going to be talking about are the 3 common fears that really mess with the online course instructors. And I've worked with a lot of clients who've dealt with these 3 fears. And beyond just mindset stuff, it actually does negatively impact their courses. And so I think it's an important topic to talk about. We'll also be talking about how to craft a clear course direction. There's a lot of C, alliteration going there. And why it's important, and specifically how to use that clear direction for your course to guide the course creation process, and more importantly, what's actually done after the course is created, because it's an often neglected part of courses. Third, we're going to be going through how to make sure specifically that your course resonates with people. We're talking a little bit about language, about marketing there. And fourth, we'll be talking about the difference between courses that succeed and courses that fail, and why sometimes bad courses succeed and why sometimes good courses fail. And finally, we got something really special from both me and Abe for you guys. So make sure to stick around till the end. We're really excited about this. We've actually never done this before. So yeah, hopefully this is going to be a good one. And as Abe said, I do love questions. Personally, I know Abe does as well. So if you guys do have questions, please don't hesitate whatsoever to post them in the questions box. If it makes sense, we'll try and answer it if it's very relevant to what we're talking about. But we'll definitely make sure at the end for Q&A to get to all of those. And again, Abe and I have something really cool for you at the end, and we also have Q&A at the end. So please make sure to do your best to stick around. Again, I know it's a bit late for people on the East Coast, and if anybody's here from Europe, I respect you for coming in a little bit the middle of the night. But hopefully everyone sticks around till the end. We'll try and keep it right around an hour. So quick little bit about me. I know Abe did a bit, so I won't I guess go too deep into this to be redundant, but I'm the host of the Monetize Your Expertise podcast. I've been building and launching courses for over 3 years, and it's something like 35 courses at this point, depending on how you count it. And the coolest fact I think about this, at least from my opinion, is that kicking butt at online courses has allowed me to actually travel the world the past several years while continuing to build and market courses for myself and clients. So I think that's pretty cool. I'm actually recording this from Taipei, Taiwan at the moment. So let's talk a little bit about how I got into working with instructors, just real quick to give you a little bit more background, and also it's quite relevant actually to the presentation. So I'm wondering, have you guys ever had some kind of statement like this, either from you or from somebody you know, where it's something along the lines of like, I'm going to make such and such course, and then like 6 months, 12 months later, it's like, oh, I'm still working on it. It's still in the works. It'll be another couple months, et cetera, et cetera. I'll make it someday. Or two, which is something along the lines of like, yay, I just made my course. And then if somebody asks you how it's going, it's like, well, my mom enrolled, and I'm not really sure how to go forward from this point. So these are 2 common situations that I think a lot of course instructors find themselves in, which is getting hung up in the process or not having a clear plan for what to do after the course is actually made. So these are 2 big topics that we'll be talking about today. And just to sort of put that in perspective, a cool little quick anecdote about how I actually I dealt with this the first time that I made my first course. I kind of encountered both of those situations where it was a little bit slow, a little bit overwhelming. I got kind of stuck a couple times, and then I didn't have a clear idea how to market it afterwards. So by the way, every time I mention a a fear, a hang up, a mistake that people make. These all come from experience for myself and also frequently with my clients, which is why I like to bring these up because I think they're really, really important. So I went through all of that with my first course, made all those mistakes. And then for my second course, I actually wanted to flip that on its head. And I was like, what's the fastest, most efficient way I can get the best results? Would it be possible to actually, instead of getting hung up and making a course over the course of 6 or 12 months and then being confused about what to do with it when it's launched, is there a way to make it and launch it in 48 hours and get good success? And so I did it as a bit of an experiment, and I literally came up with a topic, scripted it, filmed it, edited it, and launched it within 48 hours, and ended up making over $6,500. So that was in strong contrast to my first course in that example, because I was kind of like the opposite experience. And so basically, you can choose one of the two paths. You can choose the long, arduous path with bad results, or you can choose the right strategy, the right approach, the right topics, the right marketing strategy, and then much more efficiently and much less headache, achieve much greater results. So that's just something to put it in a little bit of perspective. So all of this, by the way, is a way of segueing into the core teaching one of today, which is the 3 common fears of online course instructors. And typically they are being afraid to start, being afraid it sucks, and being afraid to market. And all of these are also common themes throughout this presentation today. So first off, let's talk about being afraid to start. So when it comes to online courses, it's, I'm going to be totally straight up with the reality of courses. There's a lot of, sorry, the GoToWebinar box popped up. So when it comes to online courses, there's a lot of variables involved. There's so many different variables to not only producing the course, to the technology of hosting the course, to the managing of the course, to editing videos and how to put up nice PDFs. And then also you got to go on to actually marketing the course. There's a lot of different variables. And so it's very, very common for people to feel overwhelmed with their courses and getting hung up with too many ideas, getting hung up on too many of the details. And this is where people stall out because there's not a clear path for going forward. There's too many things going on, and it's then very easy to feel overwhelmed. And I've seen this time and time again. People get a bit overwhelmed because there's so many different variables, so many different things going on, and then they either give up or it takes them, an extra 6 months or a year to actually get anywhere. And this is one of the things I want to help you guys avoid today. So if you're experiencing this, hopefully this is quite helpful for you as we talk about this topic. The second main thing that I hear from course instructors, and also again, everything I'm mentioning, I dealt with myself, especially my first course, being afraid it's not good enough. So getting hung up on your course's quality. And often this happens in one of 2 ways. This is either hesitating to put it out into the world because you're like, oh, I'm not really sure if it's that good. And honestly, this is kind of like a subconscious thing, because if you had asked me at the time, am I afraid to put my course out in the world? I would have said no, but the reality is there's a little bit of a hang up there because I was a little bit worried about it because it was my first time putting out a course. And the second half of that, or the second way this manifests itself, is getting too anal about the details of your course to the point where you never really finish it. Trying to go for something that's perfect, kind of having this fear-based, detail-oriented, scrambling to make everything perfect before getting it out. It still makes me cringe a little bit, but sometimes you have to put something out that's imperfect. And part of the reality of that, it's like very basic entrepreneurial 101. But a big part of that is you have to put it out there to get feedback to make it better, right? And if you never launch it, then you're never going to get that feedback. You're never actually going to make it the best product it can be. And finally, sorry, but another quick story related to that. The point of this story, before I even get into it, is that the quality of a course is very rarely the cause of success or failure. And I have a quick little anecdote to explore that point. So the first course I ever made, funnily enough, I was making a course on a topic that the only other real course that I could find on this topic that was serving the same market in the same way actually turned out, and I found this after I had already was mostly done making the course, turns out to be this San Diego millionaire entrepreneur who had sold his company for $100 million a couple of years before. And I forget how we ended up talking about it, but I ended up connecting with him, and he ended up sharing with me his production costs for his course, and it was something like $100,000, $120,000, something like that, which is at the time absolutely blew my mind. I could not come close to imagining spending over $100,000 on building a course. And here I was thinking about how maybe I had spent a couple hundred or 1,000, I don't even know, but it was pretty much negligible to that point. Now, the point of the story is that, yes, while his course was quite successful, it was very popular, had all these really cool animations, and it was like just very high quality production value. My course still succeeded really well as well, even though the comparison, and again, this sort of played on all those fears of being kind of embarrassed. Like, oh, well, look at that guy. What am I putting out that I like used my iPhone to film and just did some basic After Effects type stuff. By comparison, it looks terrible to me. I'm afraid of that, but I put it out into the world, and I was really pleasantly surprised that even still today, this course gets all kinds of feedback from students, people saying all kinds of awesome things about it. Like literally, I've gotten the quote of like, "This has changed my life," and it's a bit strong and very pleasantly received. But the point is that you don't have to have a $100,000 budget. You don't have to spend a year making a course to make it really, really valuable to people. And then finally, the third main topic that is I like to talk about, because honestly, when people talk about online courses and oftentimes talking about like how to make an online course, how to do an online course, oftentimes there's an overemphasis on the creation of the course. But I think there's a big gap there, because what happens once you make the course is that you're left with a course that you still have to sell. And it doesn't matter how good your course is, if you don't have a plan for actually executing on making sure it gets in front of people, people buy it, then you're kind of up a creek. So this is what I call the publish and pray method. This is where people are afraid or don't even think about marketing their course. And that can be a huge mistake. And that's what we're going to be addressing later today in the last section. So I want to just sort of ask, like, what if there was a way to have a clear direction for your course? Because that is the topic of today's webinar. And hopefully this topic gives you a much clearer idea about how to move forward, how to frame certain elements of planning your course to achieve greater success. So let's talk about having a clear direction, and specifically why it matters. Excuse me. So when you don't have a clear direction for your course, and also this is very common, it's very easy to end up, one, never finishing, two, ending up with a course that flops, three, just kind of doing random things all over the place. Again, because there's so many things that go on with courses, it's really easy to mess this up. But if you plan for success with your course, if you plan correctly, you have a clear idea about why you're doing what you're doing, why you're even making the course, which is something we'll get into in a second. That's when things really start to take up, because that's when you can really best achieve your outcome, is when you know what that outcome actually is. So here's a quick pro tip or pro question tip. Why are you actually making the course that you're making? Or why are you working on the course that you're working on? Why did you just make that course you just launched? And this is actually a really, really important question. And it sounds kind of silly maybe, but I think it's something that's never really investigated. It's a topic that people don't really mentally dive into. It's just like, oh yeah, it'd be cool to make a course on such and such topic. But there's a reason why I'm asking you this. And there's good reasons and bad reasons for this. Because essentially, if all of the reasons why you're making a course or why you're working on a course is about you, that's actually very bad, because you're not the one who's going to buy your course. And I actually see this time and time again when people reach out to me for help on their courses. The conversation oftentimes goes like something along the lines of, "Hey, Grant, I'm interested in making a course on such and such topic. I think it's going to be really awesome because I don't know, it's going to have all this content, and like I'm really excited about this, and I'm going to price it at such and such, and blah blah blah." And it's very focused on the instructor, which is cool. You got to have your own motivation for doing things, but they kind of often overlook, who's the course actually for? Why do they care about the course? What's the reason why they're super excited about it, not just you? Because then you avoid the situation of where you're super excited to push out this awesome course, and then it just sits there because it's awesome for you, but not awesome for the people who would actually buy it. So some examples of good reasons for making a course or framing your purpose behind a course is to think about some of the following, or something similar to the following. So a good reason would be because people keep asking me how I do X. So often for me, this is people keep asking me how I do online courses. For you, it might be people keep asking me how I do SEO. People keep asking me how I am an awesome networker, etc. Another good reason would be because my target market is struggling with such and such and is already wasting a ton of money on this other solution, which kind of sucks, and I know I can do a better job. So maybe this is people are struggling with offline marketing of their business, and they're already spending a bunch of money on these crappy agencies that do a bad job, and I have this alternative solution that works so much better, and I know this from experience. So that's a very market-focused reason for making a course. It's built off of the market and your customers' motivations and not just your own. And so some examples of what the opposite of that would be, some bad examples would just be kind of like, because I want to, because I think it would be fun, because I think this is valuable, because I found this valuable in the past, because I think people would like this, right? It's a lot of assumptions there, and it doesn't really address, okay, well, you think it's valuable, do other people think it's valuable? Because of course we all have different opinions about things. Another big question to ask to clarify the direction for your course, and this is another thing that's often overlooked, is how does your course market your business? And you can build a business around courses, but oftentimes people who build courses are coaches, speakers, authors, service providers, consultants. I think I might have said that one already. But they do something else, or maybe they have other courses that they build, other info products, a blog, etc. So it's very rare that people have one course and that's their entire business, right? But one thing that's often not given a lot of thought to is how can you plug in this course to grow your overall business, right? How can you use a course to get you consulting clients? How can you use a course to grow your email list? How can you, there's a lot of different directions you can go with this. And sitting down and thinking, how does this course plug into my actual business is a really important point, because this also helps you avoid the situation where you're like, I think it would be really cool to make a course about yoga because I like to do that in my spare time. And if my business is on, online marketing, well, then the yoga course isn't really going to help me that much aside from the actual course sales. It's this like separate, divergent path that doesn't really connect with what I'm doing. So this is another big question that I think is very, very important to think about to actually maximize the results of the course. Another actually sort of on the same topic is considering how to use the course itself, because of course you can make free courses, you can make low-end courses, you can make high-end courses, you can make live weekly courses that are sort of a live bootcamp style. It can be the cornerstone of your business, or it can be supplementary to what you do with clients. And these are really important questions. And again, this ties back into sort of what level is your course at? How does it integrate with other elements of your business? And this is really, really, really important to think about, because of course, the way you go about creating, producing, and marketing a free course is very, very different than a $5,000 course. Totally, totally different. This is something we'll get into shortly as well, some details of that. So here's two questions that I think are very, very good at helping you have something very specific and use it most effectively. So here's how you put your direction into practice. Question number one, what is the specific outcome that you help people achieve? So do you help people lose weight? Do you help people be happier? Do you help people make more money with their business? Do you help people travel more? There's going to be something very specific that you're helping people do. And the question two is going to be, what are the exact list of things those people need to know in order to do that? And this not only helps frame your course, your target market, the content for the course, but also it'll play a huge role in your marketing message here in a second, which we'll talk about. But I think it's really important, and I want you to write this down.
Can I add one quick point about that too?
Sure, yes.
Just something that I've noticed with a lot of course creators is we encourage people to consider that question as well, because it's so important. What is the specific outcome you help people achieve? And my observation has been that it's the word specific that gets overlooked often when I see people first write their outcome, it's very broad. I don't know if you see this too.
Yes, absolutely. So maybe to put this in perspective, I can actually give you the example that I would use for myself. So you're right. It's people either don't have an outcome or don't have a specific outcome, but this isn't probably as specific as it could be, but hopefully this gives you guys a little bit of an idea of what an example could be. But for me personally, when people come to me asking me about courses and how to do them more effectively, the specific outcome that I help people achieve is how to build better courses, launch them more effectively, and scale them larger. So the list of things they need to know are going to be about building courses, launching courses, and scaling courses. And there's a lot of details there that would take writing a bunch of stuff or talking a bunch to flesh out. But that's the nutshell of it. And I'm very clear on that, and that really helps me understand who I'm targeting, how I help them better, how I build things. And so this is really important. And so again, make sure either you write down the questions if you're just listening, write down the questions and answer this later. And at the very least, go back later, write your answers, and be very, very clear on that, very, very specific, and it'll come into play very extensively as you move forward with your courses.
And two, if you guys want to share an example of your outcomes or what you're thinking of might be a specific outcome for your course in the questions box, we can give you a little bit of feedback on that later.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great idea. So we'll probably revisit that at the end. But if you guys have ideas and what feedback on what you're targeting, what you think your targeting should be, feel free to post those in the question box, and we can talk about them and see if we can make them better, or maybe they're good to go as is. So a quick story about how this actually plays out and why this matters, essentially. So one client that I worked with a while back, he came to me and he had, seriously, it's still one of the best courses that I've seen in terms of production value, because the course topic was video production. So of course he's an expert on that topic. So it was very, very well edited. And he came to me and was basically like, my course isn't really selling at all. I'm not sure what's up. Can you take a look at it? And what happened was, I went through and I changed this course, and it went from not doing anything to being really, really popular. And what's funny is I actually didn't touch his content at all. And again, this is one of the recurring themes here, is that, of course, the quality of a course matters, but it's a necessary but not sufficient thing, right? So if you have an awesome course, it doesn't mean your course will succeed. So his course was good enough as is, but what we changed was the targeting, the answer to those two questions. Because the original answer was something along the lines of, my course helps people who are video production experts make slightly better videos. That was essentially the message of his course, the title, the marketing, etc. Now that's not that compelling. And so what we did was I sat down, I went through like, what's the most exciting way we can repitch this that's more valuable to more people, that gets people more excited. So we changed it to essentially the little value proposition is how you can use video production to make a video that's 3 minutes long and worth $15,000. And this referred back to an example of literally how he had done this many, many times. Now that's a lot more interesting, right? Because it targets more people, anybody who's maybe a hobbyist video editor, anybody who's interested in the topic, and it has a very clear outcome, because getting a little bit better at editing videos, not super compelling. Being able to sell a really high-end video to a company like Coca-Cola, or it was something along those lines, a really high-end, huge name brand company that he sold this to, or American Express or something like that. So if you could sell a 3-minute video to American Express for $15,000, that's pretty cool. That's a lot more exciting than making a slightly better video. So that simple tweak of that messaging made all of the difference for his course. So let's move on to core topic number 3, and this is to not forget the marketing of your course. So what's the difference between courses that suck and succeed versus courses that are fantastic that fail? Got some more alliteration going there. You kind of guessed it. It's definitely the marketing. This is something that happens over and over and over again in courses that I see. People get hung up on creating the best possible course, and they're like, cool, it's awesome. Now I'm done. And then, oh wait, I have to market it too. So this is actually the #1 cause of online course failure. Because again, I'm sure you've taken courses that were mediocre or maybe kind of bad, but that were popular, versus maybe you've seen or at least known about courses that were really, really good, but they just weren't popular for some reason. Nobody seemed to be buying them. They didn't seem to go anywhere. And this is the reason why that happens. And so this is one of the things that I really like to focus on because it's super, super, super important, and it can't be neglected. And oftentimes people forget about it and get hung up on like, are my slides perfect? Do I have enough content? What exact tools do I need to like edit my videos, etc. And then they kind of think about this the last second, but it can't be an afterthought. So one way to really go about this to at least get started is to think about the questions we've been asking throughout this presentation about who you're helping, what you're helping them do, what they need to know to do that, maybe even that example that I just gave. So the answers to those questions can become your marketing message, because again, that can make all the difference. As that instructor I just talked about helping, reframing a course can be the difference between success and failure, even if the course stays the same. And that can just come down to marketing message. So one way to make this really concise, and again, you should have specific answers to this, but it's also nice to have a one-liner, is I help people do X by learning Y. So I help people become more successful in online courses by learning how to build, launch, and scale courses more effectively. And I'm sure you've got an answer to this as well. And keeping a very clear idea on this helps you frame not only how you're building your course to be most effective, but also how to market it as well. So another important point as you're doing this is to think about, does this actually align with what people think that they need? Because this is actually another interesting phenomenon which happens, is that you're the expert on your topic, right? So what actually happens sometimes is that you know what people need, but people don't really understand what they need. They have, they think they need one thing, and in reality, they might need something else. So this actually happened in my very first course as well, when I ended up reframing it similarly to how I did for that client that I just mentioned. And originally I built it as like what I knew people need, and then I did a bunch of research and validation, and then I reframed it to targeting what people thought that they need. And then all of a sudden it became a lot more effective. So we need to make sure that your course resonates. And part of this is going to be by using the right types of language, and again, speaking to what people think that they need. And I've got a couple quick examples of that here in a second. So a quick story about that. Recently, a guy came to me to get help with this course as well. And just a quick story about this. I was going through his course, and it was an introductory course to the law of attraction. And I was just reviewing a sales page, and it was interesting because it was like the best illustration that I've seen of this. And again, this is something that everybody does. I did this too when I started. Again, I did it with my very first course. So it was an introduction course to the law of attraction, and the sales page was written like manifesting abundance in your life, and like a bunch of other, I actually can't give examples because I'm not familiar with the topic, but words like that, right? So manifesting abundance, which is kind of jargony for that topic. And as somebody myself who doesn't know anything about the topic, and who therefore would be likely to take an introductory course on that topic, I don't understand those words. Those words don't really mean anything to me. And the point there is that he made an introductory course, but was sort of talking about it in a way that wouldn't resonate with people who would take an introductory course. And so this happens on both levels. Is your course super advanced? And are you talking to people like they're beginners? Is your course very introductory level, but you're not speaking to the way people view their problem that you're helping them achieve right now? So here's a simple framework for thinking about your marketing and fleshing those out. I'm a big fan of simple questions to have some simple answers to get a clear direction on things. So question one is, how will you find your market? And this is literally just like, where do people who want to buy your course, where do they hang out? How can you get access to them? Which leads to number two, which is how will they find your course? I.e., how will you get traffic to your website? How will you get your brand out there? How do people find out about you? This can be blog posts. This can be stuff like this, like a webinar. This can be podcasting. This can be paid advertising. There's a lot of different ways to get your name, get your course out there. And then step three is going to be how will they ask you for additional info? How will people give you their information to learn more? And actually, to sidestep a second, this is actually these questions are helping you come up with a marketing funnel, if you're familiar with that term. So how do you get that traffic? How do people find out about you, and how do they then opt in to, you know, maintain a relationship with you, find out more about your product, find out more about you? And once you have that, then they're in an inner circle of your brand, right? They've opted into, like, yes, I like this to some extent, at least to give you my email. Let's learn more about that. And so that's actually an example of how this can be done. Is how will they ask you for additional info? They can give you an email address for like a PDF guide. Maybe you do free consultations. Maybe there's organic traffic, and then you have people subscribe to your blog. But the point is having a very clear, specific step for this. And then the last step is, how will you raise the level of trust enough so that they buy your course? And this is also really important and often overlooked, because we're going to get into a second how marketing strategy very clearly relates to pricing. This is a question people have a lot, which is, how do I price my course? And my answer is always, it depends. It depends on how you're going to market it. And I'll elaborate on that in a second. But having this clear last step of like, okay, so people, you know, I find people in relevant Facebook groups, question one. They find out by me because I post blog posts that I write about the topic in those Facebook groups. They read it. And then step three is they come to my blog, they subscribe to my blog, and get an additional PDF guide. And then step four is going to be, you know, I run webinars every week. I have some cool, helpful emails that go out. And then they trust me, they know me, they like me. And then once a month, I give them an offer to buy my course, right? So that's an example of how this can play out. But there's actually a lot of different ways to do this. And for example, you can have like an autoresponder, a mini free course, podcast, ebook, consultation, again, webinar. But the point is not specifically right now that you should decide which one you should use, but you should understand that each one is very different, and also why this really matters, which is how pricing relates to that marketing strategy. So let's dive into that a little bit. So if you were to try to, actually, I'll just launch into the stories, because essentially the point is that if you try and use a certain marketing channel and it's the wrong marketing channel, you'll either not be able to sell your course, or you'll spend too much money or time or energy on that marketing channel with a very, very low return. So let's go through some examples of what that can look like in a good way and a bad way. So story one is recently I also had a girl reach out to me saying like, hey, I see you help people with courses. I'm looking at launching my first course. Can you weigh in on this, on how I actually sell it? And I said, sure. And basically what it turns out, she's like, okay, I got this course I want to make. I forget the topic, something to do with wellness and fitness and stuff. And I want to price it at $1,000. And her reasoning was kind of just because she wanted to. And I asked, okay, cool. How are you going to sell it? And she said, I want to run Facebook ads, because I heard you can run Facebook ads to sell a course. I'm like, okay, it's probably a little bit harder than you've been told. And I say that from experience, but yeah, sure, no problem. You can do that. What's your budget? And she says, I have $500. That's all I can afford to spend on marketing right now. And instantly, like, all kinds of red flags go off, because that's just not a good approach, because for several reasons. And let me kind of break those down in important, informative ways. So using Facebook ads to go directly to for example, a sales page that sells a $1,000 course, that's really, really hard to do. And I'm not sure I know of anybody who's done that successfully. And the reason is, you're having some random person on Facebook see some little ad, they click it, and they're like, oh, okay, here's a $1,000 product. Who is this person? What is this brand? I have no idea what this is. Why? Screw this, I'm leaving, right? That's what's going to happen over and over and over again. And the second thing is, for example, different marketing channels have a learning curve, and you're not going to figure it out in $500. And even if you did, they're probably going to spend more than $500 per person who buys a $1,000 product. So the point is her marketing strategy and her price point did not match. If she wanted to use Facebook ads, an example of how people do that successfully is Facebook ads to like a free guide, which then goes to a $37 product, which then later eventually leads to a $1,000 product, right? And there's a reason why it has to operate that way. It's because you just can't get it profitable if you're running Facebook ads to a $1,000 product. So hopefully this isn't like too technical or too marketing related, but this is a really, really important topic. Another example of how this kind of relates, so the marketing strategy and also specifically how this relates to pricing. So another client that I've worked with, he has $1,000 course as well. And his strategy actually works really well because it's well suited to his product. He has people, they opt in, they get a free consultation, which is literally just a 20-minute phone call with him. And he closes a ridiculous amount of people. And his strategy is to use a 20-minute phone call to do that. Now, that's really, really important because getting on a 20-minute phone call with somebody is very, very personable as compared with showing somebody a Facebook ad. And the more personable your strategy is, the more you're able to sell a higher price product, right? So if you're trying to sell a $37 product, you probably shouldn't get on a 20-minute consultation call with them. If you do the math, it's just not worth your time. If you're selling a $5,000 product, you better get on a phone call with somebody or have somebody on your team who does, right? Now, this actually leads into the third example, which is actually a guy who was recently on my podcast. He talked about how he used to sell really high-end marketing services to very large corporations, like 100 million plus per year revenue or something like that. And he described the sales process for those companies. And it was really, really involved. I think he said it took like 3 months. He had to have lots of meetings with people, talk to everybody within the organization. And of course that makes sense. When you have a massive project like that, you can't just be like, oh, here's a Facebook ad, and I hope the CEO sees it, and I hope they give me $50,000, right? Of course it doesn't work that way. And nowadays he stopped doing that, and now he actually sells a $5,000 course. And of course now he doesn't spend 3 months per $5,000 course purchase. Instead, now he does things like webinars. He gets on phone calls with people. He has people on his team who do the same thing. And it's mostly phone call related and webinar based. And because those are his two sales channels, because those are two sales channels which relate to that level of price. Again, it wouldn't really work very well if it's a $50,000 product. If it was a $50 product, that's too expensive a way of selling a course. And so the theme of all of this is why it matters to think about your marketing from the get-go, because chances are you're probably picking a price for your course from the get-go, and oftentimes that price is going to be somewhat arbitrary, and that can be really bad. If you pick an arbitrary price and an arbitrary sales channel, they may not match at all, and you may not be able to actually market your course effectively whatsoever. So I want to ask you guys, do you see the difference? One of the big points, the underlying themes of this presentation is how success and failure of a course is actually it's very similar. It's not like you have a really good course and you have a really bad course and they look way different. I think that's the way it's easy to think about courses, but that's actually just not true. Oftentimes you can have a really good course and another really good course, and there's slight differences in their strategy, and one is wildly successful and the other is not. Does that make sense to you guys?
Well, it makes sense to me.
Okay, cool. That's good enough. I don't want to interrupt the presentation for questions at the moment, but
I'm getting a couple of yeses from the audience as well. I think it's a really important point because it sort of ties into your comments about mindset, and it can be easy to fall into the mindset that they're like these, big secrets that the online business gurus understand that aren't accessible, to you as someone who's just getting started with courses. And that's really not the case either. It's just these small sort of shifts in course direction that can make a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually, this is one thing that I think about a lot is, so I've gotten to know, not super well, but like a little bit well, some of these people that you look to, you're like, oh, wow, this person's really awesome at this. And here's what they say that they do. And it's funny, so a lot of times, like, it's, what they teach is what they do, but there's like a couple small things that they don't, which is like will make or break what they're doing, like that key partnership or that key strategy. And it's funny because I remember I used to like emulate certain people who would teach about certain things, and it's like, why is this not working? And it's because you might miss out on the detail of like, okay, well this works, but only with this market, or this works, but only after you've done such and such. And these are really subtle things, and they're really hard to see, but they're really, really important because they can make the difference between succeeding or failing with something. So I know this is a subtle thing, and again, I've been through this myself. I know exactly how hard this can be, how potentially frustrating it can be to get stuck making a course or to make a course and be frustrated about how to sell it. So I want to help you guys do I want to help do everything I can to help you guys nail this, and that's one of the reasons why I'm here today. So if I was able to give you guys like everything you could possibly need to dominate online courses, I'd imagine you'd be pretty interested. I imagine that'd be pretty valuable to you guys. And that's why today, I'm here with Abe because we saw a need. Because Abe and Ruzuku, it's software that allows you to create and host your courses. And what I do is I help people build and sell their courses more effectively. And we're like, wow, there's a lot of synergy there, because I know, for example, a lot of people who might have a course on Ruzuku or be in that atmosphere, there may not be a clear idea about how to go about this. And so we saw an awesome opportunity to combine what we're doing, and that's what we wanted to offer literally for the first time today to you guys. So let me break down exactly what that is, and it's something I'm really excited to share with you. Basically, it's both the software you need and also the step-by-step guide to building and scaling massive profitable courses. And specifically, here's the MYE version of things. I know this slide is a little bit crazy, but if I went through one by one, it would take a very long time because there's a lot of components of this course. But essentially, this is the exact blueprint for how to go about building, launching, and scaling profitable courses. And again, there's a big emphasis on the marketing side of things and the scaling side of things. So you've got Module 1, make insanely great products. Module 2, how to pre-launch, already getting into the marketing. Module 3, how to use course platforms for passive income. Excuse me. Module 4, how to double your course sales. Module 5, and this is a cool one that's, again, I haven't seen this anywhere else, is how you can actually use courses to become a best-selling author. We've got a couple cool interviews there as well. Module 6 is how you can create a premium course brand, because I know you don't want to be one of those course creators that sells only $10 courses, right? You want to go high-end, at least with some of your courses, and build a premium brand. Module 7 is how to do things kind of like what you're watching now, which is scaling with webinars and partnerships, and how effective that can be. And Module 8 is $1 million sales funnels. This is how you build courses not into just one-off little things that just make some money, but into really large-scale businesses that kind of, in a way that I alluded to earlier, right? How does this connect to your actual business? This is how you connect everything together and scale it in a way that lets you reach more people, impact more people, and have a much more effective business at the end of the day. So essentially, MYE guides you through every single step of building, launching, and scaling profitable courses. Now, what's also cool is that I threw in a bunch of extra things, like the guide to building and launching a course in 48 hours, similarly to the process that I used for that, templates to double your course sales, swipe files of 6- and 7-figure campaigns for the email sequences and such, guides to tools that will 10x your business, because if you use the wrong tools for courses or actually anything in online business, it can quickly become an overwhelming nightmare. So there are certain tools that you can use to become more effective. You also can steal my exact business model that has evolved through lots of suffering and trial and error and blood, sweat, and tears and all that stuff. So I want to show you, break down exactly how this can look once you build out this entire business model around courses. I throw in a free copy of my bestseller, Break the System. And finally, this is also one of my favorites, how to reverse engineer and also beat your competition's marketing. Because again, you probably have competition out there that actually, it's a good chance they have a worse course than you, but they're probably doing better than you. And I want to show you how and why and how to beat that. Now, what about the software? How does Ruzuku come into this? Well, here's what's really exciting about this, is that combined with MYE, you've also got 12 months of the Ruzuku starter plan. Or if you're currently a Ruzuku customer, you get an automatic 12-month upgrade. How cool is that? And also, we also throw in extra bonuses on the Ruzuku side of things. So we've got Rock Your Ruzuku live training. We've got a personal course setup call. We've also got another private training course, taking the next step in your online course business. So throw in a ton of extra value. Honestly, the one thing I think is really, really cool about this one is the personal course setup call. I'm a big fan of one-on-one work and help with things, because I know how valuable that can be. And related, sorry, all of this combination comes from Ruzuku, and MYE, including all the modules, all the bonuses, the 12 months of the account, and you can get it all for $9.97 today. And again, this is literally the first time we've ever done this, and so hopefully your face looks like this right now. But there's one more thing, and that's how, you remember how I mentioned towards the beginning of this presentation how overwhelm is kind of common because there's a lot of stuff going on with online courses, and it's just easy to feel a bit overwhelmed and sort of stall out. That's not very good, right? Well, that's why MYE actually includes monthly Q&A calls with the community. So you can submit anything that you want in terms of course outline, course videos, course website, whatever you want. And I give you guys live feedback, answer any questions that you want. The idea there is to make it a ton more interactive and to provide that sort of personalized touch to see how the concepts apply in your specific situation. So hopefully your face should look like this again. So quick recap, everything.
If I could just say that I think that follow-up is really critical because we've certainly seen that in our programs in the past. So, folks get excited, join the program, starting to go through a curriculum, and then once you really start working on your own course idea, that's where, again, you can sort of start to stall out. So being able to come back into that, call and ask questions or just share like what you're struggling with and get some pointers is really critical.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a huge element of accountability and also sanity that's contributed by that because just on an emotional level, again, if you're like doing all this stuff, it's kind of stressful and you're like, what do I do next? I'm kind of confused. Like, do I do this? Do I do that? And just staying on track. I think sort of that community and that ability to just ask simple questions and feel a bit more comfortable with things because of that. I think that's absolutely key. And that's why I'm really excited to be offering that through MYE. So quick recap is this is everything that you're getting for $9.97 through this special offer that we're doing through today's webinar. From MYE, you get the full 8-module MYE course, which had its own massive slide of everything that entails. You have 7 bonuses worth $6,500 plus. You have monthly Q&A calls with the community to ask anything you could possibly want to ask, even specific feedback of a video or a script or anything you want. And from Ruzuku, you get 12 free months of the starter plan. You get Rock Your Ruzuku live training and a personal course setup call. And there's actually one more thing which I wasn't even able to fit on this slide, which is an additional private training course from Ruzuku. So that's all of the stuff that you're getting, again, for this first time that we're ever offering this. So if you guys are ready to 10x your courses in 2016, just go to that link, and this is where you can get this exclusive offer through MYE and Ruzuku. So now
there's the link in the chat as well.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks for sharing that, Abe. So now, again, I'm a big fan of interactivity and answering questions because I know you guys probably have some. So here's, again, the link. It's bit.ly/MYE bundle. That should take you directly to the checkout page there. And now we should go through and any questions you guys have asked, maybe you've submitted your I help X people do Y version of your course. So let's go through and talk about that now.
All right, so we have many questions.
Awesome, I like to hear that.
I'll try to organize them for you. So why don't we start with kind of questions around the business model, marketing and pricing, and then we can move on to some questions people had about kind of their specific situation defining course outcomes and so forth.
Perfect.
So in terms of the business model for courses, marketing and pricing, I think a good question to start with is from Alexia, and it gets back to what you were saying around the idea that like the difference between a successful course and a disappointing course is actually pretty small, and she was kind of like trying to apply that to her situation and asking, why is a course in my particular market likely to be successful, versus mine not being so successful, even though we're both operating in the same market. So I think she's kind of asking to sort of like recap what causes that. What are the key drivers of that slim difference between successfully marketing a course and not so much?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and this isn't something I can answer like with a blanket statement that like in all situations it's exactly this one thing. I wish I could, but unfortunately it's going to vary by example and by industry as well. Um, I'd like to relate the overall concept to probably the core topic of that, which I think is most important, is what is the key process your competitor is using to make sure people find, again, those four questions where they find, they get more information, and they buy their course. What is the process for doing that? And actually, again, this is why I added that bonus to MYE, which is how you can find out what they're doing, because it's really easy to get hung up on the surface level of things where you look at your competition, you're like, oh man, but their homepage looks much better than mine, or like their sales video is so cool and flashy, and they spend a bunch of money on that. I should do the same thing, right? Well, the reality is that may or may not play a role, but that's what that's what you can see on the surface of things. But it's more important, what is the process that they are using to get their name out there? What is the process that people are finding out more about them, learning more about them, and then ultimately buying their course? So that can be anything from how much are they charging? Do they have a bunch of affiliates promoting their product? Do they have like a really specific content marketing strategy? There's a lot of different ways people can go about selling courses, a lot of different ways. And that's part of, again, where that overwhelm can come from, because you have so many different options. And it can be very difficult to see that on the surface level. So essentially, what I'd recommend is taking a very close look at what that competitor is doing in terms of those four questions. And there's some cool tools you can actually use to get an idea about this. One, I believe, is called SimilarWeb. I think it's similarweb.com. Has a little like plug-in to Chrome where you can like see traffic and what people are doing. And there's tools like that where you can kind of get an idea about what your competitors are doing. And the most important thing is, what is their process and what is your process? And why is theirs working and why is yours not? I think it's the most important question.
Very cool. So looking at it in terms of markets, we had a question around, do you sort of have to approach courses differently, defining them and marketing them in, say, a personal development or self-improvement market as opposed to like a business or entrepreneurship market? So do you have any thoughts about, like, is it different in different types of markets, and if so, how do people think about that?
That's a really good question. I think generally speaking, and again, if you have any like additional details about exactly their topic or whatever, that would help me answer more specifically. But generally, I'd say it all comes down to what is it people are going after in your market. So for people who are, for example, trying to grow their business, something that relates back to increased revenue makes sense, right? If you're trying to help people lose weight, well then relating what you're doing back to how do people lose weight, how am I going to help you lose weight, that's what's going to resonate with them. And so I don't think generally there's like an entirely different strategy for how to market to different industries necessarily. Like, and some there are certain examples of where that's the case. But generally, it's more about what is their desired outcome and how will you clearly articulate to them that desired outcome and how you will help them specifically achieve that. There are some examples about where it does kind of matter. So for example, this is sort of related to the willingness to spend money to achieve an outcome, that principle. So for example, if you are targeting business owners, like not totally new business owners, but maybe advanced business owners, or again, like the one guy I had on my, Scott, who I had on my podcast recently, when he was targeting 100 million plus business CEOs, right? Like that's a very different market than like moms who want to lose weight, and the willingness and ability to spend money to achieve a solution is very, very different. So I'd say it comes down to those two things: is how are you going to articulate that outcome and how you're going to help them achieve it, and two, what is their general willingness to pay? Because that can actually make or break your course. I wouldn't say the process is different, but sometimes the process cannot work because, for example, if you're trying to make a course for homeless people how to use government services to feed their kids, well, That's an awesome thing to do, but like one, they're not even gonna be able to take the course. Two, they're not gonna be able to pay for it. I think it's kind of a weird example, but you get the idea. Like who you're targeting kind of depends, it kind of relates to what they can actually pay to achieve that outcome. So that's really one major consideration to think about is who are you targeting and why, how have they demonstrated that they're willing to actually spend money on this solution? Because if they haven't, then that might be a red flag for the way you're positioning your current course. And actually, I think this is a similar example that I did with my first course. I positioned it incorrectly at a not ideal market where they weren't as interested in spending money, and then I repositioned it, and then all of a sudden I targeted at a different market. They were with a better message, and then they were a lot more receptive to that. So that's another big question to think about, and to see if you can find examples of how they've proven that they've spent money on some general level close to what you're trying to price your course at.
Cool. And then a little different than these sort of market questions, but it does tie into the business model for courses. How do you think about whether to structure a course as an sort of evergreen self-study offering that is always available versus a live scheduled course where you're taking a group of people through a program together?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'd say, generally speaking, if you're trying to sell a course at a high price point and it's your first time doing the course, I'd recommend the model where you do the first version, at least, of it live, because it can be tricky to get a big course right the first time, right? Like people haven't seen it yet. You don't know how people are going to react to it. So if you create the evergreen version first, well, you don't know how it's going to resonate with people. And the best way to know if it's going to resonate with people is to do it and get feedback and then improve it from there. It's kind of a pain in the butt to make a really big evergreen course and then have to remake it because you learned something new, right? So I'd, at the very least, do the first version of it live for one of those like cornerstone large scale projects. Beyond that, in terms of general long-term strategy, I guess you have two options or two ways to think about it. Is one is accountability or community, a huge element of what people value that you're trying to target. So for example, if you had a course about weight loss, I can see that, and this is kind of like my assumption, but I could see how that might be something that's very geared towards like lose 50 pounds in 90 days or whatever. And here's the step-by-step accountability. Here's the process, but also here's the accountability. Here's the community element to support you emotionally on that process because this is a really hard thing. So maybe that's true, maybe that's not, but I can see that being something that people would value the community and the camaraderie of having a live version of that you, for example, launched once every 90 days. If it's something that it doesn't really matter, if people don't really care about the community element or the accountability, then it makes sense to make it evergreen as quickly as you can. But again, I'd still recommend doing at least the first version live so you can get that live engagement, that really high interactivity to learn as much as you can to make the best product possible.
Cool. And somewhat related to this, I think, because it has to do with targeting, is we got a question about like how to reach kind of high-end clients. So I guess this is going to be market dependent, but do you have thoughts in general about how to reach the high end of the market, people who would be high-end clients or willing to invest in premium courses? Is there a strategy for targeting that part of the market specifically?
Yeah, it's a really good question. A lot of different angles to that. So first I would ask, I don't know if they said, but did they indicate like what they mean by high end? Is that like $200, $500, $500,000? Like, because the answers would be quite different.
Yeah, no, but Harifi, if you're listening, you can chime in with a little more information about what do you mean by high end? How high end? All he said was he was looking for strategies to reach high end clients besides networking. So I guess getting beyond kind of in-person networking.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll answer generally, and if you want to chime in with numbers of what you mean by, and I'll for the time being, I'll assume you mean something like around $1,000. I'll answer it that way.
Well, he says 500K US dollars, but maybe you can clarify what that number refers to. Is it the revenue you would earn from a single client? Is it that person's net worth? Just expand on that. Then we can further refine the answer, Harifi. But go ahead with your general strategies, Grant.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Share more.
Yeah, so if it's 500K versus 500 US dollars, that's quite a bit different answer. But
Yeah. I don't think there are any 500K courses, so.
yeah, I don't know. I'm going to be very impressed. So if you are able to do that, please come back and let us know. That's pretty cool. So yeah, if you are thinking, if this is in reference to like really, really high end stuff, as I mentioned, his name's Scott Oldford. You can check out my podcast. He talked about like really, really, really high end, like $100 million companies. Personally, I don't have experience with that, so I'm not going to speak to that because I don't really know beyond what he told me. So that's the answer to that. If you're talking about like 500 plus, which it sounds like maybe you were saying 500 plus dollar courses, what I'm going to relate it back to is again the strategy used to market a course given its price. So a couple things. One, you should understand that it's going to take a lot more energy to market a course that's higher priced than it is the course that's $5. $500 versus $5. People are going to have a lot more objections to buying a $500 course, and you have to make sure people know you, like you, trust you enough to give you that amount of money, right? So there are some things you can do in terms of targeting. Like one good way, especially that combines the right marketing strategy with the right kind of targeting, if you find audiences that are at the level that you need to target to get somebody to spend that much money. So for example, if you want to run a co-hosted webinar to somebody's audience that you know the demographic of their audience, that they're willing to spend that much money on that level of product, right? So that's good validation that those are going to be premium clients. If you, for example, send out an email to an email list of people that have bought a $10 product, well, your response is probably going to be much lower because a lot of people are willing to spend $10 but not $500. So that's one way to think about targeting is like, what have they demonstrated that they're willing to pay? You can do, there's a lot of different answers in terms of like specifics. Like you can target Facebook ads in a particular way that sort of relate to income. That's kind of like too nitty gritty for this answer. But I think the biggest thing is like, what can you find that they've demonstrated that they'll spend? And then two is, what is your strategy that's like interactive enough to make sure you can sell at that price point? So if you're selling a $5,000 course, for example, then you have to spend a lot of energy and probably money as well in terms of like even just time spent like through you or your employees, et cetera, assuming you value your time at some dollar amount, interacting with them, building their trust, giving them awesome content, getting on consulting calls with them. And the higher the price point, the more you have to do that. So if it's a $500 product, then you can probably do things like a series of webinars. If it's 1,000 plus, it gets a little bit trickier, and maybe you got to do consulting calls. I found the best result if it's 1,000 up. That like it's the best way is going to be as many 20-minute consulting calls as you can. And as I gave an example, story 2 of the last section, Brad, he has an Amazon course, sells it for $1,000, and his primary way of doing that is just lots of consulting calls every week, and that works really, really well for him. And that's what's worked for me, and also a lot of my clients as well. So again, the channel depends on the price point, and just make sure it's more interactive the higher the price that you're going for, and then try and find a market that's demonstrated that they're willing to spend that level for that sort of product.
Cool.
I'm trying to answer these questions really thoroughly. Let me know if I'm getting like too rambly or something.
Yeah, very. No, that's good. I think the depth is helpful because people definitely want to be able to apply it. So guys, shifting a little bit from marketing to the actual engagement within a course, and this kind of ties into what you're doing with the monthly calls with MYE. So obviously that's one like bedrock strategy for how to engage people is to have regular live interactions, a call or a webinar. But we had one question about what other ways do you recommend to create community and to engage with people beyond doing those types of calls?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, I'm sure we could talk about how Ruzuku can do that, because there's a lot of really cool things that are built into Ruzuku, like the discussion boards, the sort of built-in webinar systems. I don't know if you want to talk about that. I'm also happy to talk about external things that you can do. I've looked into this quite a bit, and there's a lot of little cool tricks you can do. There's like the standard stuff, and there's like some cool innovative stuff that you can do as well. So I don't know if you want to talk about Ruzuku first, or
Yeah, I'll mention a couple of things, and then yeah, you can share your external strategies. So in terms of creating community within a course, I think they're just getting the basics right really helps. So just spending some time writing really thoughtful discussion questions that really speak to people and get them opening up and sharing. It's simple, but it's powerful. I mean, the mistake I see people making is writing discussion questions that are too generic or not interesting or provocative enough to really elicit a response. Um, so once you write good discussion questions and start getting responses, then if especially when the course is starting, if you can be super active or have someone on your team be really, really active and responsive in the community. So an example of this, when we ran a program called the 30-Day Course Creation Challenge, and Felicity from our team was, just like on top of like every question people had, everything they were sharing in the course, and it created a just massive energy in the community because people knew that their questions would get answered. They knew if they shared something, it would get commented on. So just getting those basics right and using the discussion features built into Ruzuku to engage people is a great first step.
Nice. And so I'll speak to some of the other things you can do as well that are a bit more external. So this is helpful to anybody, whether you're on Ruzuku or not. So Abe just mentioned having staff or somebody on your team to interact with your students. That's absolutely a good strategy as well. But if you don't have somebody on your team who can do that, another thing you can do is set up a email autoresponder. So when somebody joins your course, that they get a series of emails saying like, today, or some kind of notification saying like, hey, today you're starting, here's how you should start. And then next week they get, here's week 2, here's what you should be doing this week, here's what you should have done. Do you have any problems? So basically just setting up a series of automated emails or some kinds of notifications, depending on your system or your setup, checking in with people, guiding them, asking for feedback, asking for questions, just basically creating that engagement. It's not as good as a live person. People, I think, very clearly understand that it's automated and don't respond as much. But I've actually tested this where I started doing this for a course and then I stopped because I wasn't getting responses. And then immediately I started getting emails like, hey, where did it go? I really like those emails. And so even though they didn't respond or do anything with it, they kind of felt like you're there, if you will. And so that's one really simple way to do it as well, that even if people won't say anything, I think they value. Another couple things you can try, this is, maybe in conjunction with, or if you don't use Ruzuku, because I know there's discussion boards and such on Ruzuku, but a common thing to do is social media groups, like private Facebook groups. And again, this can be in addition to Ruzuku as well. Private LinkedIn groups, etc. Basically just where people already kind of hang out in their spare time and they can ask random questions whenever they like. That's something that I've seen instructors see huge success with. Another approach this one's kind of more of a pain potentially, but Slack, if you guys have heard about that, it's kind of like a live group chat thing, and people have created private Slack groups specifically for courses so people can ask random questions in real time. It's like more real time than Facebook groups, which kind of update and are slow to update, but also would require more maintenance. And then finally, one cool thing that I haven't actually seen an instructor do, but I hope somebody does this sometime. There's an app called coach.me. I believe that's the name, the URL as well. And what's cool is you can create like private coaching programs, and it's this cool like checklist habit app thing, and people create programs for like get 6-pack abs in 6 weeks or whatever. And here's what you do today, here's what you do tomorrow, etc. So you could very easily, because it's not actually that hard to set up, build out like, okay, day 1, did you watch video 1? Check the little box, and it's got this cool little animation that like explodes and has sparkles and stuff. And you can create that alongside your program so people can get that kind of interactivity even on their iPhone. So that's something that's cool. It's a little bit, outside the box, but hopefully those series of options between Ruzuku and externally give you some good ideas.
Awesome. Well, we're about 12 minutes after, and I think we covered the most kind of big picture and questions about both marketing and course engagement. So maybe we can wrap up with just one sort of more tactical question, and we'll see if any last ones come in. But I think this might be a good one to wrap things up with, because I know many people getting started out wonder about, what does it cost to get started with courses, and what types of equipment do you need? Like, are you using fancy professional microphones and that kind of thing, or what does it take equipment-wise to get started?
I love this question because, again, it relates back to that story I told towards the beginning about the Grant versus the millionaire. Yeah, so you can spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on courses with like live HD filming and like nice, pretty lighting setups and stuff like that. But I can actually tell you what I did for my very first course that I also did the sort of live talking head filming for. And again, I spent like a couple $100 on it because I had to at the time. And what's funny is it turned out really well. I got lots of compliments on how it looked. And all I did was I used basically my iPhone and my friend's iPhone, and one did audio that I sort of like dangled above my head right outside the screen, and the other one with a simple, very simple, cheap tripod, I did the video. And nowadays, phones do really good video and really good audio if you get them close enough to your face. And so that's just what I did to put it together, and it turned out really, really well. And I bought some background paper to post up. It was like $30. And yeah, I just did some simple video editing with some text additions, and there you go. It turned out really, really well, and I got lots of compliments on it. That's live filming. You can get even simpler than that. Like for example, if you're recording your screen, doing stuff like what you're watching now with the sort of recorded presentation style, or maybe recording your screen, it's really simple as well. Here's a cool trick. If you have QuickTime on your computer, you can even record. People talk about ScreenFlow, Camtasia, etc. Those are good. They're more powerful. But if you don't want to buy that, or you don't have it already, you can even use QuickTime to record your screen, probably for free if you've already got it. And then for the audio, the biggest thing is to make sure you avoid places that are very echoey, because that's the biggest thing in terms of setup, is avoid places that are echoey. And then there's really awesome mics that you can get for like 20, 30, $40 that aren't super expensive. I have a friend who has a headset microphone that I think it was like $5 or something. It was ridiculous. And it sounds really, really good. So I'm talking on a higher end mic now, but I definitely did not start out using that type of thing. And you definitely do not have to. So the main thing is just to have some kind of audio device that's not your computer or your headphone little speaker thing. Some kind of external mic, and avoid echo as best you can. And those are like the two key things to audio, and then you can just record your screen with QuickTime. So hopefully that answers a bit in a variety of circumstances, but it really doesn't have to be that complicated, and you don't have to have a huge budget to do this.
Wonderful, love it. Well, I think we can wrap up then. We just got a lovely comment from Janet. She says, "Thank you. Deep gratitude. This has really been helpful, especially the discussion of matching marketing language to course level, and many examples of how to market effectively when the 20-minute consultation would be needed, for example. I am grateful." So glad it was helpful for Janet and for everyone else who shared the takeaways they were getting tonight. We really appreciate your time and your attention.
Yeah, everybody, thanks so much. I really hope, again, this was helpful, and I'm glad to see it was for some of you guys. So yeah, please take for example, the questions that you've seen today. I really hope you guys take the time to write them down, think about them, answer them, and incorporate them in your courses so you can achieve greater success in them. So thanks for having me on as well, Abe.
You bet.